the entire Titan Nation. Touchdown, Kansas City. Mahomes under pressure off his back foot, and then the 100-meter dash by McCole Hardman getting the gold medal.
Jackson will keep it on the read option. He's got it to 40, 35, spins at the 30. He's got room 20. Lamar Jackson 10, 9, touchdown Ravens. Lamar Jackson with the spin, the sprint, and the score.
Now, this is unbelievable.
Lamar Jackson giving Patrick Mahomes a little run for his money when it comes to young quarterbacks lighting up the gridiron. They may be young, but they're ready. And the highlights, as we saw with those two spectacular plays over the weekend. Mr. Smith, who is the more electrifying player, Mahomes or Jackson?
I think it's Lamar Jackson. I don't think he's better. I don't think anybody can say anybody is better than Lamar Jackson right now. I'm sorry, than Patrick Mahomes right now. There's no doubt about that. You know, he's a sensational quarterback, and we see that. But when you use the operative word here is electrifying, a showstopper, walking through the turnstiles and looking to see something spectacular that he specifically himself does. I think that when you look at the Kansas City Chiefs, even though Patrick Mahomes can clearly fling that football in a sensational fashion and he's a spectacular quarterback, you look at him and, you know, whether it's Tyreek Hill or Damian Williams or somebody like that, you look at what's transpiring with the Kansas City offense and you view them as prolific. I've seen Patrick Mahomes zip passes, but in relatively short yardage situations to that kid McCole Hardman, for example, and then there they go. They fly. We've seen that. In the case of Lamar Jackson, he himself is electrifying a la Michael Vick when Michael Vick was starring in the National Football League. His elusivity, his speed, the ability to run with the football better than most running backs. He himself as a specific individual, and the operative word here is electrifying. I think Lamar Jackson is more electrifying than Patrick Mahomes.
Well, I mean, you have a hell of a case. Lamar Jackson as a runner. I mean, Hembo tweeted something, researcher tweeted something yesterday that I retweeted during our show. Like, Lamar Jackson has more wins than this one, more completions than that one, more TDs. And the names are like Drew Brees and Patrick Mahomes and all these. So, like, it's not just that he runs, but, oh, my God, can he run? And he had his Mike Vick moment when Vick was playing the Vikings and the two guys knocked each other out. He had that spin move was sort of like his Mike Vick moment, the iconic moment from this season so far from the sensational Lamar Jackson. But I got to tell you, Stephen A., I find Patrick Mahomes to be more electrifying because from the quarterback position, Mahomes can run, not like Lamar Jackson, obviously, but he can do things throwing the ball that electrify me more than any player doing just about anything in the NFL. He does things like you just saw the no look across the body going the other way, but also things like with the game on the line, he's kind of running out of bounds, the play's dead, and he just flicks the ball, and you're like, oh, that might go for a touchdown. You know, he has those kind of plays, and he can make plays with his arm on the move, unlike anyone who ever lived except for Aaron Rodgers, and I think he's a little better at it than Rodgers even. So while normally I would agree with you, like, who was more electrifying, Mike Vick or Brett Favre? And this is sort of an improved Mike Vick versus an improved Brett Favre in a way. But there's something about Mahomes doing, like, the fact that we're talking about quarterbacks. I'm surprised you're on the opposite end of this argument because normally we switch places here and you're like, if you're known as a quarterback, you have to do this. When we're talking about quarterbacks, as sensational as Lamar is running, because he can also throw, I don't know that anyone does anything ever better than Patrick Mahomes throws that football, and that's what electrifies me.
I remember in 2006, Michael Vick ran for over 1,000 yards. He's the all-time leading rusher for a quarterback that I remember with the yards that he's accumulated in that particular season. He was absolutely spectacular running the football. I think he ran for over 1,000 yards in 2006. Last time I checked, the Tom Brady's of the world, the Big Ben Roethlisberger's of the world, even the Brett Favre's of the world, and others. We're still playing the Drew Brees, obviously, and others. We're still playing in the National Football League. They were clearly better, but they weren't the showstopper. that Michael Vick was. They weren't the box office appeal that Michael Vick was. When we used the word electrifying, notice we didn't say better, we didn't say greater, we didn't use those words because obviously Michael Vick wasn't those guys. That particular season, he was only complete like 52% of his passes, but still, he magnetized you.
Yeah.
You couldn't wait to see the highlights where you were watching him. And that's why I keep peeling out that word for this particular segment when we talk about the word electrifying. Because what we're talking about is an individual who his individual heroics is what leaves you transfixed and magnetized. When I look at Kansas City, Go ahead.
Well, Mike Vick in that season that we all remember was also a winning player. Like, people forget that. They didn't lose to anyone for a while. And by the way, got to Veterans Stadium and lost. Yeah.
That year.
Right.
That year they were 7-9. That year they were 7-9.
Then it was the following season. Where he gets to,
okay.
He went on a long winning streak. He gets to the playoffs. He loses to a better Eagles team.
That was his last. Yeah, that was his last year. That was his last year in Atlanta. I'm just giving you the stats.
Okay, good.
That was his last year in Atlanta.
Good, because I'm confusing years. It's 15 years ago, whatever, 10 years ago, whatever it was. But my point is, Lamar Jackson's also winning. But now let's see him do it in the playoffs. I want to say something about electrifying because I agree. Vick was like the guy when you think, but the other player you thought at the position who was electrifying was Brett Favre for different reasons. Favre played with a charisma and his arm was so electric, and he was winning. Mahomes reminds me of a souped-up Favre, like even maybe a better Aaron Rodgers, but with the charisma and electricity of Favre. And that, to me, is even better than a souped-up Vick, if that's the way you want to think about it.
But what I'm saying to you is this. There was a time before Brett Favre was Brett Favre that we looked at him, and do you remember that bad brother Sterling Sharp? Remember him?
Of course.
Remember how we used to talk about him, and there were actual warranted comparisons to the great Jerry Rice. I mean, Jerry Rice was clearly number one, but Sterling Sharp was considered like the second best receiver in all of football. He was absolutely sensational. Yes, Brett Favre was throwing him the football, but he was catching it. It stood for something. And so what I'm saying to you is when you look at Patrick Mahomes, you also look at Tyreek Hill.
Yeah.
You look at Hardman. You look at Damian Williams. You look at Travis Kelce. You look at Sammy Watkins. You look at Robinson and these boys. When you look at Lamar Jackson, I understand that there are other guys on the Baltimore Ravens who can play, Max. You and Molly know that as well. We don't have to go into their names. You know why we don't have to go into their names? Because who thinks about that?
Because
we're thinking about Lamar Jackson. With Kansas City, we think about all those guys.
If you change the question to who's the best one-man show, then I agree with you.
We got to go. The top 5 QBRs in the NFL right now all belong to African-American quarterbacks. Dak, Russell, Patrick, Lamar, and then Deshaun Watson. There are no more unbeaten teams in the NFL, so which squad is the best in the league right now? I sense a Stevens A-list coming up, but maybe with a little twist. Don't go anywhere.